The lake was eerily silent, the surface glass-like under the dusky blue of twilight. Trees loomed on either side of the forested cove, and a single house perched on the distant bank radiated a warm, almost dreamlike glow. In the middle of the vast water, two figures broke the stillness, a young woman in a soaked white lace dress, eyes wide with fear and urgency, and a man, unconscious or worse, floating behind her as if life itself was gently slipping from his grasp. No one knew how they had ended up in that lake. But one thing was certain: this moment, captured in silence, would become the turning point of not only their lives, but of many others too. Her name was Clara Rivers, and she had always believed in kindness, the quiet sort that didn't expect applause, the type that sowed seeds in silence and hoped for unseen blossoms. She had moved to the lakeside town of Elmsworth just a year ago, leaving behind a bustling city life that no longer felt like hers. Elmsworth was peaceful, wrapped in forests and folklore, where time meandered and memories clung to the fog like ivy on stone. She had bought a modest cottage near the lake, intent on writing her first novel. Life slowed down. Every morning brought the calls of birds instead of car horns, and she found herself reconnecting with nature, with words, and with herself. It was during one of these quiet weeks that she first noticed him, Daniel. Always walking by the lake with a heavy look in his eyes, a man clearly haunted by something. His presence was ghost-like, seen but never heard, there but distant. At first, Clara respected his space. But curiosity, coupled with the stirrings of empathy, drew her in. One rainy afternoon, she had seen him sitting near the dock, soaked, unmoving. The rain lashed around him like punishment, but he didn't flinch. Clara had brought him an umbrella and stood beside him in silence. No questions. No conversation. Just presence. That was the first thread in a fragile connection. In the weeks that followed, she learned pieces of him, like scattered shards of glass too painful to gather all at once. Daniel had lost his fiancée in a car crash 18 months ago. He blamed himself. She had been driving to meet him when it happened. He had insisted on it. The guilt, the grief, and the unbearable weight of survival had driven him to isolation. Kindness felt like a betrayal to his own guilt. Clara never tried to fix him. She didn't offer hollow comfort. Instead, she brought quiet things: tea on rainy evenings, books with notes tucked inside, stories under the stars. Slowly, Daniel began to thaw. He didn't smile much, but he listened. He didn't speak often, but he stayed. And then came the night of the storm. The storm arrived like an ambush, unannounced and merciless. Clara was walking back from the village with groceries when the skies broke open. Thunder growled, and winds howled like ancient wolves. As she reached the edge of the lake, she saw the faint glow of headlights through the trees, and then a loud crash. She ran. There, by the bank, Daniel's car had skidded and crashed against a fallen tree. Empty. Her heart thudded. She looked around, screaming his name, but there was only the sound of the storm and the hiss of rain on water. Then she saw him, halfway into the lake, stumbling, lost. Daniel, she screamed, but the wind swallowed her voice. She didn't think twice. The water was freezing, biting into her skin like knives. Her dress tangled around her legs, but she fought forward. He was drifting now, unconscious, his body limp. She grabbed him. The swim back felt like a battle against death itself. Her limbs ached. Her lungs screamed. Every stroke was powered by one desperate prayer: not him. Not again. By the time she reached the shallows, lights from the distant house had turned on. Someone had seen them. Help was coming. But Clara didn't wait. She dragged him to the shore, pressed against his chest, and sobbed his name. He coughed. The sound shattered the night. Daniel recovered in hospital. He said little, but his eyes spoke volumes. For the first time in nearly 2 years, he cried. Not out of pain, but relief. Gratitude. Hope. Clara stayed beside him. When he was discharged, he moved into a spare room at her cottage for a while. The trauma didn't disappear, but something had changed. It was as if being pulled from the water had washed away more than fear, it had cleansed a part of his soul. He began helping out in town. Volunteering. Fixing up boats. Reading to children in the library. When people asked what had changed, he said just one word: kindness. 1 year later, Clara finished her novel. It was titled The Depths of Grace, a fictional story inspired by her and Daniel's journey. The book didn't just tell a tale of survival, but of something deeper: the profound power of human connection, the ripple of one act of compassion, the transformation possible through patient, persistent love. It became a local bestseller, then a national one. Clara never saw herself as a hero. She always insisted Daniel had saved himself, that she had merely held the light until he was ready to walk toward it. But those who read her story knew better. They saw in Clara a rare kind of bravery, the courage to wade into someone's darkness without fear of getting lost herself. Daniel, now an advocate for mental health and grief healing, often spoke at schools and community centers. He never failed to mention Clara. Not in a grand, romantic way, but in the quiet reverence reserved for those who change lives without ever asking to. In Elmsworth, the lake remained still and silent, bearing witness to it all. On certain evenings, when the sky turned golden and the wind paused just long enough, people swore they could feel something in the air, a kind of echo, a memory. Of a woman in white. Of a man saved by grace. Of kindness, like water, deep and unstoppable.